Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidiri, on Salam Media. We're in the second and final hour of the show, and we are continuing our coverage of the Gaza war, the genocide that is unfolding in Palestine. And we're now going to be turning our attention to yet another ceasefire announcement. This time from US President Donald Trump, who's calling it a final proposal. According to Trump, Israel has agreed to a 60-day ceasefire with Hamas. But while mediators Egypt and Qatar tried to nudge the talks forward, both sides are sticking to hardline positions, if you can put it that way. Hamas is demanding a full withdrawal from Gaza, which is justified, and Netanyahu is vowing to eliminate the group altogether as bombs continue to fall, including a strike that killed the director of the Indonesian hospital and his entire family. Civilians in Gaza are asking one question: will this be a real path to peace or just political theater like we've seen before? To help us break this down is Jeff Halper. He's an Israeli-American anthropologist. He's an author, and he's also the director of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions. And he's long been critical of Israeli policy and is known for asking the tough questions that many within the Israeli political mainstream won't. Prof, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Always a pleasure having you on air.
Always good to be here.
Pleasure's all ours. I think let's start with the framing. Trump has called this ceasefire proposal a final deal of some sort, but does anything about this feel final or even credible from where you're sitting?
No, Trump isn't the most articulate guy in the world in English. It's not final even by his own definition. It's a 60-day ceasefire, so it can't be final. And the trouble is that Trump really has no strategy, no understanding, no interest in the issue, really. I mean, he's focused on the Nobel Peace Prize or whatever, economic relations with Saudi Arabia, where it's rumored that Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, made $2 billion in the last 4 years since the first Trump administration. So he has his own considerations that are completely him. And therefore, it's very hard to bring in a rational element, where you could really say, well, this is where it's going and this is the reason behind it. It's very hard to do. So where we are right now is with this idea of a 60-day ceasefire, which goes back to this Witkoff proposal, of a few months ago. So this could have been done a few months ago with the same things. That really doesn't go any far, because let's remember there already is an agreement that was signed a year ago, that went to stage one. We did stage one. Stage two was ready to go. And then Witkoff became the negotiator after Trump came into office, and he messed the whole thing up. All of a sudden, there's a Witkoff proposal in the middle for 60 days, and then only 10 hostages get released. And then after 60 days, you renegotiate and maybe you go to somewhere else. It doesn't go anywhere. And the whole point was, why didn't Witkoff simply go to stage B? If Trump has this influence over Netanyahu, what that signals, from my point of view, is not that Trump doesn't have influence. Trump could tell Netanyahu what to do. He doesn't have to suggest to Netanyahu maybe a 60-day thing. He can just do it. The problem is that Trump doesn't know where he's going. Netanyahu kind of manipulates him. And so you get these weird things like the 60-day ceasefire idea. So in other words, I don't know where it's going exactly. It has to go to an end of the war. The Israeli public wants an end of the war. And of course, just one more sentence, the thing that nobody's taking into account is Hamas, is the Palestinians. They're not even asked. Now there's ideas that Qatar is trying to pressure Hamas. Don't forget, Hamas is in a life or death situation. For Israel, it could be 60 days, a ceasefire, and then we'll see. For Hamas, the conditions that Israel is imposing is complete disarmament, the destruction of Hamas, like you said, that Netanyahu has talked about. And really, with no plan of what happens the next day. Is anybody going to rebuild Gaza? What about the people there? They're still living under the threat of being expelled to Libya. by Trump
mm,
and Netanyahu? Who's going to take over the governance? I mean, all these things are open ended. So I think Israel's happy because Israel just wants to see this thing going. And Trump has no idea where he's going. So it's very hard for us to sit down and kind of rationally see where this could possibly lead.
mm, mm. What does it mean that, even with Israel's ruling coalition, there's a division, and that the opposition leader is offering to provide a safety net of some sort for a ceasefire deal? Can we say this is a sign of political fragility within Israel, or something else?
I didn't quite get that. Say it once more.
So basically, looking at Benjamin Netanyahu internally,
Yeah,
and the
right.
politics that he's facing at home, and the political fragility.
Right.
Is there a way can we link the two, the 60-day ceasefire proposal and his political survival back at home?
I think so. His political survival really isn't in danger. It's another 6 months before there can be another no confidence vote in Parliament. Uh, I don't think his government's in danger of falling. I just think that Netanyahu is kind of on a roll,
Mm,
and his idea is, I guess, that, he's balancing two things. On the one hand, we've talked about this before, they're heading towards normalization, completing the Abraham Accords with Saudi Arabia. Maybe Syria would fit in. And that is the ultimate triumph of Zionism. I mean, if you normalize Israel and its settlements and lock Palestinians into a little Bantustan on maybe 15% of Palestine, Israel wins. Zionism wins. And now you're normalized with the Arab world, with the United States, the international community, and basically it's over. So he wants to go there. That's the big end game. But on the way, I think what he's trying to do, and in a way it's sort of sweetened the pie for the Arab states, is destroy all the obstacles on the way, destroy Hamas, destroy Iran's capability of attacking, destroy Iran's proxies, and so on. So I think he's still in this, he hasn't gotten to the end of the destruction phase, Netanyahu, of his policies in order to move on to the normalization phase. So I think this is where there's kind of a dance between him and Trump. Trump would like to end this whole thing. Now, why Trump wants 60 days instead of just an end to this whole thing, I don't understand either. I don't know what the 60 days gives
mm,
anybody in particular. Maybe it's a way for Netanyahu to say, well, during those 60 days, all right, we'll get some of the hostages back. It'll lighten the pressure on me, but I can always go back and continue the war if I want to. So it buys him some time. But on the other hand, they have to end this in order to get on to the bigger process, which is normalization. So whether it's 60 days or a couple months, I think we're in the stage of ending this Gaza thing. The problem is, again, to what end? What's going to happen in Gaza? And that
mm.
doesn't seem to be of interest in particular to anybody.
No, definitely. I want to focus a bit on regional and geopolitical dimensions here.
Mhm.
You've mentioned normalization a few times, and I want to
Right.
focus on this brief Israel Iran air war that we've seen the last couple of weeks. You have Iran, which is weakened, according to many, after that brief war. How does that shift almost influence the regional dynamics, and does it embolden Israel's position when it comes to ceasefire negotiations?
No, I think it very much emboldens. I don't know if that's the word.
Mm,
I think what we talked about this last time, that Israel and Saudi Arabia are kind of beginning to share a co-hegemony over the whole region. Saudi Arabia is moving towards an economic hegemony, that goes together with the Emirates, but Saudi Arabia is the main economic engine here. But it's not that strong militarily. I mean, it wants a defense pact with the United States. It wants better weaponry, but it's not really a military power. That's Israel. I mean, Saudi Arabia couldn't deal with the Houthis, let alone with
mm,
Iran. So I think Israel going after the Houthis, you know, and going after Iran and having kind of dispatched Hezbollah to a large degree, I think it's seen itself as doing this favor to Saudi Arabia and the Emirates and the other Sunni states. And then in return, then it's paved the way for normalization, because now there's really no obstacle. Saudi Arabia doesn't have to look over its shoulder all the time. So Israel's saying, look, we created the situation of security for you guys. Do your business. And all we want in return is normalization, so we can become an Israel with our settlements, done with the Palestinian issue, and we can begin to go on. So I think that's really where we're going. And I think it's true that Israel has, in a way, I mean, not neutralized Iran completely. We know that it hasn't destroyed its nuclear, but it's set it back enough. And, Israel can always go back and attack again. So I think Iran has to go through a process of rethinking itself. What is its role in the region, especially if Syria falls into the Abraham Accords? And Iran can be very isolated. Even they're beginning to talk about elements in Iraq that are interested in the Abraham Accords. So I think for all the bravado, I think Iran does have to rethink its place in the region.
No, definitely. You touched a bit on Hamas, and that no one is talking about Palestinians. No one is trying to get their point of view regarding this ceasefire agreement. From where they're sitting, how do you think they would be responding to this? How would they be reading this proposal made by Donald Trump?
Well, Hamas is a resistance organization. It's the only resistance organization of the Palestinians that exists. And so, I can see Hamas getting into a ceasefire with Israel, or, agreeing to sort of be a presence. In other words, they don't want to dismantle, their militia. They don't want to surrender. Trump said unconditional surrender also on the part of Hamas, not only on the part of Iran. That's what Israel is demanding. But, the implications of that, think about it, is not that I'm losing this battle over Gaza, but I'm still a political presence. No, Israel really wants Hamas to be gone as any kind of political presence. And if that's the case, not only is there no resistance, there is no representative of the Palestinian people genuinely, except the Palestinian Authority, which we all know is a collaborationist regime, so that the threshold is really high here. It's really Israel demanding a surrender of the entire Palestinian liberation movement, moving towards normalization. It's almost like a demand that the Palestinians agree to become Transkai, to become an apartheid Bantustan within an apartheid Israel. That's really what it's all about. And I think Hamas refuses to erase itself as a representative of the Palestinian people.
I think we're going to leave on that note, Prof. Thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure. I really appreciate your insights.
Thanks for having me.
There you go. That was Jeff Halper cutting through the noise on Trump's so-called final Gaza ceasefire deal. And yeah, we've heard while leaders and headlines and promises, continue to happen. What's really sad is that the bombs continue to fall on hospitals. Hospitals are turned into morgues. Children and young families are left clinging to survival under siege. And this is, it's not just a question of diplomacy. I think it's a question of justice. It's a question of accountability and power. And if this is a real attempt at peace, or simply a pause to reset the cycle of violence, because we've been here before. I think in the latter part of the previous year, we're all excited for that proposal of a ceasefire deal. There were scenes of jubilation across Gaza. We were all hopeful. We thought we have put a stop, or at least we have assisted in putting a stop to that part of a genocide. That was phase one of the genocide, if I remember. We're supposed to have phase 2 and phase 3. But, well, nothing happened after that. The genocide continued unabated, and the people of Gaza were again left to fend for themselves by the world, essentially. So, yeah, I think really, really concerning. And the one thing that's also concerning very much is the fact that Hamas and the people of Gaza are not consulted. They're just being told what to do. A complete surrender. That's it. What about restitution? What about rebuilding? What about retribution? What about accountability for all of those lives that have been lost? No one seems to answer that question. But then again, what would you expect from a Benjamin Netanyahu and a Donald Trump? You've been listening to News and Views on Salam Media. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be having our hashtag Heard on Air feature where Inayat Wadi had a brilliant panel last night on his show Wednesday nights with Inayat. And the focus there was on pro-Palestine protests here in South Africa and the growing legal hurdles that South Africa faces to hold IDF soldiers, South Africans who served in the IDF, accountable for their actions. Failures of the NPA comes to mind, and these people are known, they are recognized, but I think it's our legal justice system that fails. So he had a really, really awesome panel. He had Uzay Mohammed from Cape Town Intifada. He had Advocate Shamima Sali from Al Jamaa Party, who are currently in Parliament, and Professor Yusuf Chikta from Palestine Solidarity Campaign. So that was a wonderful conversation. You can take a listen to it. Otherwise, from myself, Salah, and the rest of the team, let's go bye for now.